We are now live. I'm told by Be Live. This is awesome. Good afternoon. Justine is living in Hawaii, so we will say aloha, namaste,
Aloha.
namaskar, satnam. So, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us again this afternoon. And we do have a treat in store. Justine Shelton, who is a certified IAYT yoga therapist, certified cranial sacral therapist, and in my mind, a certified awesome person. That we should have initials for that. Justin is joining us, and so welcome from Hawaii. We are so happy to have you, and I'm very, very envious of your weather. It's about 106 here in Las Vegas. So I saw some breeze coming through your room a few minutes ago there, and I was like, oh, I wish I had some breeze. Anyway, we are going to discuss yoga therapy, and I thought that Justine was the perfect person to wrap up this month on this subject of yoga therapy because she is on the front lines. She is working with clients. I met Justine when I was at the Soul of Yoga in Encinitas, California, doing my training. She was my teacher and a mentor, and fell in love with her right away. Her wisdom, her knowledge, her humor, just really quite outstanding. So welcome, Justine. And we're going to start off with that big question of what is yoga therapy on the front lines? What do you do? What does it feel like? What are you seeing? Talk to us.
Thank you, Abby. I'm happy to be here. I appreciate you.
Mm-hmm.
So this is, if you've watched the other talks this month, it's been a fascinating month with John Kepner talking about where is yoga therapy headed, and Michael Lee talking about the mental and emotional aspects of yoga therapy, and Arun Deva bringing in Ayurveda and yoga therapy. So if you missed those, please watch them. They're amazing. And on the front lines, it looks so. I'll tell you my experience. Any yoga therapist can have different niches that they work in. And I do teach a lot of group classes that are therapeutic. And that's made easier by having long term students who you can educate along the way so you don't have a bunch of new people. And then I also work individually with people who are looking to improve their health in some way. Maybe their physical health, maybe they have a hamstring origin tear or low back pain. Maybe it's their emotional health, or they have a physiological issue. And then also their spiritual life. So it can look many different ways. But what I love about yoga therapy is it's enveloping all of that. So even if someone comes to me thinking all they need is help with a hamstring origin tear, as I'm going through the intake, I realize they also have liver problems. Their wife left them, they're depressed and are worried about money or whatever. So you're going to weave in the different aspects of yoga therapy, certainly address what their primary concern is, but then also weave in other aspects that are going to improve their life on all levels. And I view myself, I am not the yoga therapist telling you, who will fix you. A yoga therapist to me is a teammate in your health plan who might have more knowledge in certain areas that can direct you what you can do to improve your life on every facet: your physical health, psycho-emotional health, spiritual health, physiological health. Um, yeah, so it can look many different ways, and I'm loving what I'm seeing in yoga therapy. I ran a cancer recovery class or cancer recovery program through a yoga studio for about 10 years that was referred to by other cancer patients, oncologists, that sort of thing. So there can be very specific yoga therapy classes, or there can be more general classes. And then individually, you can really hone in and give people their education and their home practice on ways to bring yoga therapy into their life to serve them. Yeah.
So, what would be the main main difference or main reason why somebody, say, with lower back pain or something, why would they choose to come to a yoga therapist rather than, say, a physical therapist or a chiropractor or any of the other very valid and very wonderful modalities? But so how would yoga therapy really differ from those other offerings?
For me, with yoga therapy, it always comes down to the breath. So, and I work a lot. I do cross referrals with chiropractors, PTs, OTs. So we're all part of the healthcare broader team. But for me, the difference in yoga therapy is the breath, linking the breath to movement, surrounding the movement with breath helps to bring across, I don't want to say quicker, but oftentimes if you're adding in the breath aspect to a physical practice like PT, it speeds up the healing. And so, not to mention, if someone is not breathing, I hate to use words like proper, but if you aren't breathing in a way that's serving your full structure, meaning maybe you're in so much pain, you're breathing just in the upper chest, and that sets off a whole physiological issue as well, to where there's more tension in the body and the body's not getting the prana that it needs to every cell in the body because the breath isn't ideal. And so bringing in that overlaying aspect of the breath, I think, is what differentiates yoga therapy. And part of what I love about yoga therapy is I'm empowering people to take health into their own hands. There's something very beautiful about that. They don't need me. They're given this little package of yoga therapy. This is the knowledge that you get to incorporate into your own life, to where the power is now in your hands to move in the direction of positive change. And that's a beautiful thing.
So, in essence, what you're really referring to is that we're really going back to the conversation of yoga, going back to the conversation of Ayurveda. We are really addressing not the dis-ease or the actual pain or the name of whatever it might be, but addressing more what has caused that imbalance and what is causing that distress. So that in essence, we're really dealing with the self rather than the physical matter.
Right.
Would that be
Yeah.
fair?
Yes, that would be very fair. And educating how, I mean, I know this is a common term or a hip term to use now, of the mind body connection. But the
Mm-hmm.
more I work with people, for instance, in severe chronic pain, the more you can see that. I can witness it in myself. I had a pretty severe back injury. I'd love to say it was something exciting, but it was not something exciting. I had back issues. And I was sitting on the floor doing healing on cancer patients, pushed up and slid over. Didn't push up enough. The bottom three vertebrae slid to one side. Fascial plane pulled everything back, and my spinal cord got crimped. And so I was
Ouch.
able to get that put back by an amazing cranial sacral practitioner who's also an osteopath. That got the structure back to where it should be, but the inflammation would not go away for months. And I was in fear. And that made the whole cycle continue on, continue on. And this is just a little anecdote. One day I was having coffee with my husband in the morning, which I probably shouldn't have been having coffee because it's drying to the tissues, but I was having coffee anyway. And I said to my husband, I was fed up. And I just said, I just want to get back to normal. And my husband looked at me and said, you might have to deal with the fact that this is your new normal. And I started crying, but it got in there. And over the days ahead, when I became more accepting of that, okay, what if this is my new normal? How can I adapt? How can I change? What do I need to do? Something in that relaxation allowed a softening in my body that then allowed me to move more towards healing and getting back to normal. And I'm happy to say I am better now than I was before the injury. My back feels much more. So it's bringing all of that in, but I had to face my fear of, I move my body for a living. I show people how to do things for a living. And that was a big part of my identity. What if I can't? Well, then I better get way better with my verbal ability, So it's looking at all of those aspects.
It would seem that that experience for you as well would be very, very beneficial, having gone through that awareness for the work the amazing work, I may add, that you did at the cancer center that you worked at for so many years. And for those that are not familiar really with what that entails, I can only say that Justine was just amazing with these patients and these clients. And would you care sharing some of that? Because I know cancer is on everyone's mind. We go to the doctor and they say we have cancer, and it's yeah, you have to take a deep inhale and go, okay, here we go on the ride again. All right. How do you do that? So you were taking that empathy and that knowledge and that experience of your own and helping translate that to the clients and patients with cancer. Do you want to share some of that?
Yes, I mean, I learned so much from, I can call them my cancer patients, but they were my friends. They became my friends and my teachers, quite honestly. And I listened a lot because I had the training as a yoga therapist. I didn't have the real life battle on the front line of what is it like. I did do a training with a friend who is also a cancer survivor and works with cancer patients. And what she did for her training, when you got there, she gave you an envelope with your name on it. And you're not to open it until, and what she did at the beginning of the training, she asked everyone to open this envelope, and it was her diagnosis, but it had been crossed out with your name on it. And to sit in that moment, well, that's hypothetical. It can put you towards empathy, but it's hypothetical. When you're seeing a single mother who's trying to make sure she lives through seeing her son graduate from high school before she succumbs to inflammatory breast cancer, that puts it way more in perspective. And getting a cancer diagnosis, now this is from years of relationships and talking with people. And this is my kind of assessment of what it's like. You go in and you're given this diagnosis. And now we're going to take your personal power, set it over here. You need to be here at this time, here at that time. You have this test, this scan, this, that, da, da, da. It is overwhelming. And it affects your life. Like John Kepner was saying, it is financially, I think he said financially toxic.
Yeah.
I use financially devastating. I don't care who you are, where you are, it is financially devastating. And then there's the fear of, can I work again? Will I lose my job? Will I ever be able to get back to work? I learned a lot, like getting a car loan before you lost your job, so that, because that discrimination is out there. If you have a cancer diagnosis, all of a sudden you can't get any loans or any financial help. But for me, what was beautiful to witness was, even if I'm seeing them in a private setting, that's one thing. If they're coming to a yoga for cancer recovery class, even if it's just that hour and a half a week, which rarely it was, usually they're taking other classes, they're practicing at home, they're learning little poses that help them and doing it at home. It's giving them some sense of their personal power back. There is something I can do for myself to feel better, to feel less fatigue, to feel less fear, to be in the present moment and not go into all the what ifs or what could have been if this wasn't who I am, if this wasn't my diagnosis, to come back to this moment of, this is where I am now, and how am I going to play the cards that are dealt me? And how am I going to handle this with as much grace as I can? And wow, did I see a lot of amazing stuff. And I can't tell you how many cancer patients told me that their diagnosis was probably one of the best, I wouldn't say best things that happened in my life, but one of the most impactful things that happened in my life, because it was such a strong wake up call for me that I need to change. My role as a DA is not as important as my happiness in my family life. And you would see these changes that were just amazing. Yeah, it was. And then for me personally to realize, I don't know how to say this, play. I want to win. I want the happy ending. I want la la la. Everyone survives and rides off into the sunset. And I came home one time from a private client who I'd become very close to, really distraught and in tears. And she wasn't getting better. She was diagnosed with her third kind of cancer. It was just, and I just said to my husband, I'm so heartbroken. And he goes, well, when they get better, is that because of you? And I said, no. How arrogant is that? And he said, well, is it any less arrogant to think they're not getting better because of you? Maybe you need to look at what healing really is. Healing might not be the happy ending I want of everyone riding off into the sunset to live happily ever after. Healing might be helping them come to terms with the fact that this life, this physical body is drifting away and we're moving on to what's next, and escorting them through that process, which is not easy. And I obviously still have work to do because it still brings up a lot of sadness. But it's an incredible honor to walk that path with someone. Yeah.
So the yoga philosophy, which we were all brought up, we are not the body. So the journey then becomes this awareness of the body is going through this. Can I, first of all, allow myself to understand it? Can I be open to receive the message? But then helping that person as a yoga therapist really realize that this is their path, this is their journey, that there is something that only this cancer, the presence of this cancer, can help them release for their next life so they don't go through whatever that is again. And that's pretty profound when you think about it.
Yes. Yeah. And it, as you're talking, what keeps coming in my head is something my teacher would say in training. Because there are times where someone has a sore low back, I work with them and they get better and they move on, and I don't hear from them again until maybe they hurt their back again. And then there are a little bit more serious things that might come up. But what he said, when the disease is progressive and it will take their life at some point, we don't know the end date, but we know that it's progressing. He said, then your job is to help them realize this body is not who they are. And that's a big order. You know, I started my train, you know, a lot of my clients I'm much younger than. And I had one student who was a very strong Christian woman, old enough to be my mother. She was like a mom to me. And one day when she couldn't come to the studio anymore, I would go to her house. And she looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, what is it going to be like when I die?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
How do you answer that? Yeah.
There's no answer for that. For me, I can say what I thought. And you know what we did? We laid on her bed and hugged each other and cried. And then we got up and did our practice. Yeah.
And there is the beauty of yoga therapy for me. It is giving that time, giving that attention, giving that intention really taking the time, and this is nothing against the Western medical profession. It is set up in such a way that they barely have time to even know the name of the person that they're looking at, let alone have that kind of time and that attention. So this is not meant to diss that at all. But I find the beauty of the yoga therapist right now is exactly what you just said, that holding that space, being in that space with that person, um, and just being there. And sometimes that's enough.
Yeah, a lot of times it's just letting your humanity merge with their humanity. And there's a beauty in that. And I do I do get attached, and I do want to know about their family and all of that. And I do worry about their children left behind and all of that. But that's why I chose the path of a yoga therapist, because I want to be able to have that humanity. I don't want to have the where I have to keep them at arm's bay, because there are times for that, and oftentimes that's the only way. If you're an oncologist and you're working with a lot of people for your own sanity, sometimes that's what you have to do. And for me, I mean, I will tell, this goes for the yoga therapists out there, have people in your community for support, because you will need it. That particular day, that the story I was just telling, when she asked what it will be like when I die, I left her house driving on these back windy roads in Vista, and I started crying and crying and crying, and it was not safe for me to drive. I pulled off, and I called a healer friend of mine, just to have another voice that could say, yeah, been there, I get it, I understand, you're doing great work, keep going. Because that's important too, because we are all human. Of course our heart is going to break, and for me as a healer, if it doesn't break, that's when I need to start looking at what I'm shutting down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that brings up two things in my mind. First of all, the team that you're talking about, which is that person that you, or persons, plural, that you can call, but also the other part of the team, which is, maybe Ayurveda is not your thing. You took your 50 hours, but it really isn't your thing. So you need to have an Ayurvedic doctor or practitioner, an Arun Deva, who you can call and say,
Yes.
okay, this is what I'm finding. Can you help me out? Or for me, anatomy, it's like I still don't know the difference between my knee and my shoulders. So, who can I call to help me realize that the shoulder's up here and the knee's down there? You know what I mean? So having that team
Right.
of professionals that are there with you and can help you at a moment's notice. And the other thing that comes out of that conversation that you just had was, going way back to my very first yoga recovery with Durga Leela, where she said the we of wellness and the I of isolation, and the I of illness is isolation. And I'm thinking of COVID, and I'm thinking of how we've all really become aware of community and connection through this, forced isolation. Can you address that at all? Have you worked with anybody at all who's been, you can't work with somebody with COVID, I'm sure, but somebody who's had a family member or anything like that, or someone who's really been feeling the throes, maybe they live on their own, from COVID?
Yeah, I definitely have. So I moved to Hawaii not quite 2 years ago, and I still have a pretty big tribe back in California of students who became very close friends.
I'm
Some
one of
are
them.
single. Yep. Yay. Um, some are living alone. Some are, for instance, another one who is kind of my adopted mom, along with Abby. She's 80 years old and lives alone. And a couple years, ah, 2 years ago in May, had one lobe of her left lung removed. So, of course, there's the fear of, we don't want her to get sick. She's also, I have to say, very vibrant, healthy, and all of that. But one day I was talking to her and she was tearing up because she goes, "Yeah, my daughters come by, but they won't come in the house. They won't hug me. They won't," which is their daughter's, it was her daughter's way of loving her. Like they've been out at work or wherever they are, they don't want to expose her. And she understands that up here, but her heart was hurting. So it's finding that balance.
Mhm.
And now that things have lessened up, and of course I'm telling her what to do to, for me with COVID, it's all about prevention. Strengthening the immune system, keeping the lungs healthy, keeping the auxiliary breathing muscles loose and open so the lungs aren't compressed in there. Um, but really reaching out, and particularly, I'm very fortunate because I live out where I'm very isolated, but I have nature all around me. The birds are singing, the dog is here. I have my husband, there. And one day I talked to another student back in California who's 78 and lives alone. And I was on the phone with her for 2.5 hours. And later that day, I said, "Oh, I didn't get much done, work wise, because I had this long conversation." And my husband goes, "What better healing is there than to have a really full, long catch up conversation with someone who's feeling isolated?" So
Yeah.
it's reaching out and talking, sending, phone conversations, little cards. I connected with a friend from college and she sent me asking for my mailing address. She just like once a month sends me a beautiful little postcard like, "Hey, I think it's awesome you found your niche in life and so glad you're happy." I mean, just spreading joy for the
Yeah.
only purpose of spreading joy. And I think
That's
that's important. Yeah.
so as we begin to close down our fast 30 minutes here, is there anything for the person out there uh, that might be struggling right now, whether it's because of physical dis-ease, whether it's because of an um, um, emotional condition that's happening, whether that's fear or anger or whatever it might be? Is there anything that you would like to say as a parting sort of encouragement in a sense?
Yes. A couple things.
Oh,
The first thing is I've been fortunate enough to do two cadaver dissections to ostensibly learn about anatomy. It was the most spiritually profound thing in my life to see this amazing machine that we walk around in. And this body, everybody out there wants homeostasis. Our body will do amazing things to bring us back to balance. So trust in this vehicle you have. It is a gift, and it is not a miracle. It is miracle upon miracle upon miracle upon miracle. And so remember that. Trust your body. And then and this is my practice, because I'm not going to lie, I've gone into fear, I've gone into what's next, I've gone into all of that, is to come back to the breath. And I'm going to say, I want us to be clear here. When you're breathing, you're in the present moment. When you're focusing on your breath, because we're always breathing, that will help bring you back to the present moment. But if you're anxious or feeling a lot of fear, don't try to increase the inhale, because that can be not a good thing. Allow the inhale. And if you're feeling a little constrained, let the arms help you. Let the shoulder girdle open. Inhale, allow the inhale, and then focus on lengthening the exhale. And do that several times throughout the day, where it's just bringing your mind back to the present moment, focusing on the breath, lengthening the exhale. And a lengthening of the exhale to me is a magic bullet. It calms the nervous system, calms the nervous system, and will help you feel more grounded. Breathe, baby. Yeah.
I love it. Justine, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I know all of us, I'm in Nevada, but I know all of us in California, and me in Nevada. Miss you desperately. And it's really wonderful to have you and hear your words and feel your heart. So I thank you tremendously. For those of you that are on the talk with us, I am actually taking next week off. There will not be a talk next Wednesday, which is July 4th week. But after that, we will actually be welcoming Justine's husband, Alan Shelton, as he speaks about enlightened entrepreneur. The subject for next month is going to be spirituality in the workplace and how we can establish that. And our workplace is changing, is it not? We're not necessarily in the offices anymore. We're at home. How do we create this beautiful space for us to be able to work our dharma, to really achieve our dharma? So it's going to be a lovely month ahead of us, and I hope that you'll join us. Meanwhile, please have a safe July 4th. And I really ask everyone to please remember what July 4th is really about. Really pull out that sort of, start reading about the true history of this country and really start thinking about what is it that is happening right now in society. What part do I play in this? What part has my ancestors played in this? And how can we really turn this around and make this July 4th be that intention that we will not go backwards, that we must go forward. So with those words, I say namaste. I thank you all so much for being with us. Justine, you're just such a peach. Thank you. Love you deeply. Everyone take care. Be wise, safe, be well. We will see you on July, what's after the first is the July 8th. All right. Thank you, everyone. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you, Abby.